Hello everyone and welcome to episode 9 of the IWFM webinar series. Don't know where this has gone that we've got on to episode 9 already, but yeah, been an interesting few weeks, particularly for everyone at IWFM and obviously across the profession as well. So our webinars are a continued success and really excited about the one today because it's really moving into the how-to elements of our webinar series today. There's been a what a whys, plenty of panel debates over the last few weeks, but today's really focusing on something that is a focus for many businesses pre-COVID-19 and certainly will be post-COVID-19. And what I mean by this is we're talking about leading for resilience and resourcefulness in terms of the industry going forward. So I just realised we're having problems with my webcam, so apologies for that. It's my internet connection today, so hopefully you still can hear me. I'm Peter Brogan, Head of Research and Insight at the IWFM, and along with many others in our volunteer communities, we've heavily been involved in developing our webinar series for our members and non-members. And as I said, I'm really excited about today's webinar in particular because we have a gentleman there that you can see on your screens called Marcus Child, who's co-founder Positive of Reframe, and also for those that attended our 2019 conferences when conferences in their physical format were still going ahead, Marcus was one of our keynote opening speakers for that conference. Not only is Marcus a great speaker and trainer, Marcus has developed this over the years and has a number of awards. So he's an award-winning speaker trainer today that we have and are lucky to have with us today, as well as Marcus speaking at our conference. He's also been involved in many organisations, many brands, CEOs, right from the top right down to senior middle management level, as well as young people. He's been involved in training and going into organisations, which I'm sure Marcus will expand upon in his talk. So thank you once again for joining us on the webinars. Just to let you know, this will be recorded. So for those that couldn't attend or would love to pass on to their colleagues, this can be shared. Also, just to make you aware, slightly different with this, and hopefully Marcus' webcam's working a lot better than mine, is that we would like you to change your settings on there because it will be a very interactive session today with Marcus using some flip charts and screens. So you do have the option there. And as a reminder, there is a Q&A session section within the webinar. So would love you to send your questions in as Marcus is going ahead. And without being a spoiler alert, there will be some questions throughout that Marcus would like to get you involved in. So we're just trying to make this as interactive and as enjoyable for your experience. But I'm sure we will, and we will have a post survey to prove how well you've liked the webinar. So from that point of view, please also fill that in. So Marcus, if I can pass over to you now, and hopefully the technology will allow this to happen.
Great, thank you very much, Peter. And well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you ever so much for joining today. I should say I'm broadcasting from the Cotswolds, and it sounds like I've had a nice career from that introduction from Peter about working with all these companies over the 22 years. But I would like to say that I started life in a rather different place and actually began as an educational failure. And one thing I think that matters ever so much is how we see ourselves and how we talk to ourselves, and the stories we tell ourselves in times of challenge, times of crisis, times of COVID-19, and times of recovery. So part of this seminar is about how we might talk to ourselves and talk to our teams. And an important diagram that I've lived with for a long time is this one. Straightforwardly, it suggests that the stories we tell ourselves and the way we speak to ourselves impacts directly the state we're in. And the state we're in impacts how we perform, which then speaks back into our self-talk. So for example, if I said to myself, Marcus, you're a useless presenter, you're rubbish on webinars, you always get nervous and you can't manage yourself properly, and you look like an amateur with a flip chart. If I did say that to myself, the chances are I'd talk myself into a nervous state. And when you're nervous, then you're more likely to make a mistake, and as the first mistake comes in, then I might say to myself, I knew this was going to go badly, and we get a vicious circle. And of course, the opposite's also true. And if you ever see somebody performing brilliantly, whether it's a sports person or a performer of any kind, or somebody just doing their job in a flow, then the chances are they're in a really composed, controlled state. And as they perform better and speak well to themselves, this thing is a virtuous circle. And speaking of my background for a moment longer, now as a child, I was always told I was thick, and I knew I was thick. And my parents said, as long as you're nice, that's the main thing, but you'll always be a C-stream boy. So I ended up going to school thinking I was thick, talking this story to myself, and eventually getting unclassifieds in my O-levels. And you can get an A to an E, then an F, and then you can even get unclassified, where they write out unclassified in full on your exam certificate, just in case you thought you stood for unlucky. So anyway, I managed to get unclassifieds in my O-levels and was leaving school. But sometimes a leader gets involved and changes things. And in my case, a teacher at school said, this doesn't have to be the end for you. It could be a beginning, and you could start again. You could resit your O-levels, come back to school. You're a great rock climber. I want to teach you to become a formidable rock climber, but come back to school, believe in yourself. I'll encourage you, I'll help you, but we'll get you climbing, but you also have to resit your exams. So I went back to school, and it all changed. Indeed, I ended up saying to this teacher, how to get to become a teacher? I'd like to be like you. And he said, you have to go to university for that. I said, where did you go, sir? He said, Cambridge. And it's not intended as boastful, but I did end up getting a distinction at Cambridge University. And I think it was light years away from where we were supposed to go as kids, in our family at least. And I think it was because somebody stepped in and affected my self-talk. As a leader, if you say encouraging things to people and you're an influential person in their life and you keep saying good things, complimenting, seeing the good when it's done, cheering somebody on, then we can shape and reform their self-talk into something which gives them a state which is worth having. And I think that's a key leader responsibility. So if I go into what makes a resilient person, if you like, or a brilliant person, or someone performing fantastically, there's something here about our superpower, I think, is our state. The state we take into each room when we go there. The resourcefulness, the ability to think swiftly and in an agile way, and to make good decisions and good choices. In other words, when you feel good, you tend to make good decisions. And how we manage our state as leaders, of course, has a big impact on others. What state should we go for then? These are the keynotes of today, really. I think there's something about finding a way of being relentlessly bright-sided. I don't mean ridiculously optimistic all the time, but I do mean finding a way of looking for the good and the possible as a routine, as a habit, as opposed to the other way, seeing the negative and being doubtful and suggesting poor things. So there's something about achievers, winners, people who end up getting good things out of life and putting good things into life, have a kind of upbeat, can-do mindset. How do we keep that alive in our teams, especially when times are challenging? Secondly, when I went to become a teacher, I said these are the things to my class that really matter. Ambition drives everything. I'm going to be talking a lot about purpose today. When you have proper ambition and intention, a destination in mind, a finish line to get to, a company's aiming for a goal, which, all right, we put it back this year because COVID's got involved, but what was it before and where's it going to be? Living with ambition really matters. Then there's something as well about being a nice person. I think the way to be is a good relationship builder, a kind person, a decent person, a generous person, a gracious soul, and someone who's good to be with. And there's a sense in which when someone feels good with you, I was going to write confidence. They have confidence in you. You have relationships which grow confidence. If you're a leader who manages their state, you're positive, you're goal setting and looking forward, and people have confidence in you, it's ever so strong. But the word confidence comes from the Latin word confidere, which literally means total trust in something. So there's something about if you really trust yourself, have total trust in yourself, self-confidence, other people might well have trust in you too. There's something about us being really upbeat about our goals, sharing good relationships with others, And lastly, having energy. And I think this is rather underrated. But over this lockdown period, I've been reading a lot about leaders and successes, and like one does when you've got a bit more time on your hands. And I think in my career, I've rather undervalued or underrated energy. Because in the end, the people who get things done are the people who keep turning up and keep trying new things and have the energy to get up again when something doesn't work and think of something new. Woody Allen put it rather nicely. He said the people who run the world are the ones who turn up day after day after day, continuing with energy. And I think there's a relationship between when you're positive and looking forward and feeling well supported, it gives you more energy to try harder, move quicker and be resourceful. So that's my introduction, really. I went to a school in Essex, as it happened, and I taught my class by saying things like this. So it's ever so important to make sure that we really live a life like this, and that our whole curriculum that you work with me is about this. And although it's not any kind of evidence, I would say that in 2018, I did a workshop in Lazard, the International Investment Bank in London. And when I finished the workshop, the gentleman in the picture there who's got spiky hair came up to me and said, "Marcus, I've been waiting 30 years for a conversation like that." I said, "How do you mean?" He said, "Well, my name's Gerard Veerman. Don't you remember me? You were my teacher. I was in your class. You said to us, have really big goals and never give up on the goals and always be purposeful about making them come true." And this was a class where 7 kids out of 30 were supposed to pass grade C at O-level, and the other 23 each year had failed as an average. But Gerard said to me, my goal was I was going to work in a bank, and my father had done so, and now I run Lazard, or a department of Lazard rather. I think I've done a bit better than my dad. But my goal did come true. And next week when you come to see us, I'll make sure that, well, you meet with Matthew as well. He's a gentleman in glasses. Matthew Kelly was in the same class, and he now runs Bula, the Swiss international company. And the other chap in the picture, Dave Nichols, was also in the same class as Nestle's sales director for Europe. And I thought, wow, isn't that amazing that 3 kids in the same class could all go on and be so successful like that, and put it down to them meeting up regularly and having goals. But then again, in the same class too was another lad who said, I'm going to be a footballer. I said, who are you going to play for? He said, Ipswich Town. I said, I'm ever so sorry, but this is about ambition. Couldn't you think something bigger? It was a joke, but nonetheless, he did reply eventually by saying, I'm going to be captain of my country. And anyway, they said that they keep meeting up with Matthew too. He's he did play for Ipswich, of course, and then that ended up being captain of Ireland. And but then again, when James is in the same class and they keep meeting up and sharing their goals, one can see that this really does matter. And I read something over this lockdown period as well, which was quite a challenging thought. It said, it was Tim Ferriss saying 99% of people don't believe they could really achieve something great. And I hope that's not true. I shared this with, for what it's worth, one woman who was keen to be a rower. And she was just starting rowing, and we had a go at setting a goal. And 18 months later, she won a gold at the Commonwealth Games. That's Chantal Chalhoub, second from the left. And I had a builder working in my house, and they saw these photographs of people I've worked with and said, Marcus, I've got a kid in my street who's he's a nice kid and he really wants to be a motorcyclist. I wonder if you might help him. So Dan used to come and sit on the sofa, and I'd invite him to make the biggest goals and write the biggest plans and keep on believing and doing pure self-talk in a positive way. And he ended up winning the Isle of Man TT a couple of years later, as did a girl whose father was in a workshop, and he said to me, my daughter's finishing swimming because she's been beaten up and bullied by her teacher and she can't take it anymore. She's going to stop swimming. And I'd love her to carry on because I think she's got a real passion for it and she's really good at it. So it's not meant as a boast, just evidence. But I spent a weekend with Becky, just seeing if I could get her back into setting some big ambitions and believing in herself. And she won a gold at the Commonwealth Games in the next Commonwealths that followed, and the one after. So yeah, I think big things are possible. I think this really matters. And I did become a rock climber, of course, and I coach the British team, and I know that when your state is in a good place, when you really can keep yourself confident, when you've got no real justification to be so, it can change everything. And just to finish this story, Mr. Shannon, who all those years ago encouraged me to be a teacher, I saw him 3 or 4 years ago for the first time in a while, and I said to him, my whole life's been about having a go at things which seem improbable and encouraging other people to, and it all changed since I was 16 and met you. I said, did you ever have a goal in life that never came true? And he said, well, I always wanted to go to Yosemite, climb in Yosemite Valley. That would have been something. But sometimes you have a dream that doesn't come true, but at least it inspires you. But I said to him, do you fancy it? There's still time. He's only 70. So El Capitan in Yosemite Valley is rather special. That's half Dome, actually. But that was his dream, to go to Yosemite Valley. And there's me on the front head wall of El Capitan, and that's Mr. Shannon at 72. Now we're at the time of our lives. So I think there's something ever so important about living such a life, making sure that those things really matter to us, especially in times like this. And I wondered whether the COVID-19 challenge, crisis, whatever we want to call it, might have given us a time to stop and think and to reset ourselves and make some decisions about what kind of company we want to lead, what kind of person we want to be, what sort of things we want to do for our customers, how we really want to spend time with our families and get a balance in life that wasn't there before, whether we might want to rethink a whole load of things and make some new decisions. See, the word crisis, its origin is Greek, and it's spelled with a K, and it really means decision. In other words, a crisis is literally a time when we are invited or forced or pressurized to make a decision of momentous nature. And I wonder what decisions we're making as opposed to drifting back into old ways. The word crisis in Cantonese, I thought we couldn't really have a conversation about COVID-19 without mentioning China at some stage. But in Cantonese, it's formed of 2 characters. So when I see the word crisis in our language, that's 6 letters, and that just says crisis. A Cantonese reader would see those 2 combined, those 2 characters, as crisis. But when you separate them, this first character means danger or threat, and the second part means opportunity. So embedded in the very notion of crisis is there's a chance, an opportunity for new things, if we decide so. I did a talk with Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair's sidekick stroke advisor, and I didn't think I'd get on with him, actually. He wasn't my cup of tea, I didn't think, not my thing, a spin doctor, etc. But anyway, I went onto the same platform as him and I listened ever so carefully, and I rather admired him by the end of it. Now, it just seemed to me that Alistair Campbell's life has been a series of efforts and setbacks, and even dealing with mental health, which he's really articulate about now. But he just said all through my life, I just kept saying to myself, this has gone wrong, get good out of bad, get good out of bad. Every time there's a big setback, get good out of bad. And whether we like him or not, I think that's a really positive and important thing to say. When something goes bad, it's an opportunity. The greatest Premiership manager in the Premier League, let's say that, he grew up with this motto in the family household, day after day, hearing that, sweeter after difficulty, sweeter after difficulty. Go through tough stuff, then when we meet again, when we dine again and have new times and fresh times and parties, etc., with our loved ones, when that all comes back, it will taste all the sweeter after difficulty. Therefore, there's something worth relishing in the difficulty for the sweetness to be as is intoxicating and wonderful afterwards. I'll ruin it now by saying that was Sir Alex Ferguson. If you forget that line, we might remember that that's rather strong. And another piece of advice which runs into all this is Arthur Ashe, the tennis coach, said, start where you are and use what you have and do what you can. All you can really do ever is control the controllables. And I love that notion, the simplicity of it. And all these things I'm saying, they're completely simple, but yet they're not habit for people. We get the idea, but how do we convert this? Well, somebody sometimes does. No, now it's Colonel Tom Moore, isn't it? But Colonel Tom Moore, there's a great example We might have forgotten about him by now, but in his day, a few weeks ago, he was, start where you are. Where's that then? I've just got my house and my garden. Use what you have, a Zimmer frame, and do what you can. Well, I'll see if I can walk around the garden 99 times or 100 times before I'm 100. And curious how controlling the controllables is a real thing. And lastly, there's a sense in which if we ever get stuck anywhere, if you meet anybody who's cynical, critical, got the habit of being negative, then chances are they're not moving anywhere. I think really happiness is about momentum. It's a sense that we're moving somewhere that we want to go to. And it's not arrival necessarily, but it is about us having a sense of movement in a good direction and the flow of that and being with others in that direction too. And I think there's something about maybe this thing may have been an awful setback to us, but it's also been a real invitation for us to get a new direction and to make those questions of ourselves and really stick. But thinking about standing water, I've got a diagram of it, really. Standing water at place number 5. The poisoning water, the static nature of being stuck in a place, dwelling in disappointment or whatever. So this is a diagram written by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. By the way, although I'm going a bit dark now, I'm hoping this will end up going to the sunlit uplands of enlightenment and positivity by the end of it. But I want to kick off with a book that I read a few years ago called On Death and Dying. Uplifting reads of a Wednesday morning. But I wanted to know how long it was going to take for me to get over my father's passing. So when my father passed, it wasn't supposed to be like that. It was a terrible shock, and just didn't know what to think, actually. And I wondered how long it would be before I could mention his name again and not feel teary and in a really uncomposed state, let's say that. And this diagram is her explanation as to what happens when you get some bad news. When you get a setback or some awful news like you've lost your job, you've been furloughed, other people haven't, but you have, or your partner's left you, or you get home from work and find your house has been broken into, or you lose a big contract, or someone gets promoted above you, or a child fails their exams, any kind of disappointment which you didn't see coming. This is the kind of experience one goes through emotionally over the stage of recovery. And I wonder whether anybody would be prepared to just whack some thoughts up there on the chat line so that Peter can hear them and shout some of them out. But if you imagine that, you lose your job, or you lose a really big sale that you're really counting on, or a big client walks out on you, or any of those things, what's the first psychological response when you hear that news? And the second, and the third, and the fourth, how would you label these parts of the curve? I wonder if anyone's able to scribble down any notes in the chat box in terms of what might number 1 be, or number 2 be. Perhaps I need to wait for a pause for a second before some stuff comes up.
So yeah, Marcus, Peter here. So we're allowing people just to bring in some questions, some responses. So thank you everyone participating. Jade said panic. We've got Fiona Stewart. Thank you, Fiona, saying fear. Barbara, shock. Shock's quite popular. Come up a couple of times, Marcus. Oh, anger. Oh, the dreaded relationship, whether it's work or personal. Rejection. Disbelief. Angry.
Right, Barbara went really well, and her team, who started out shock at the beginning. So initially, what? You look at your car that's been smashed into, and it what? Followed by, then somebody said disbelief, or Bill Clinton said denial is not just a river in Egypt. We'll end up going through that kind of moment of it can't be. If your car's in the car park and it's smashed into, you look at it, what? And then almost like if I keep staring at it for long enough with enough intensity, it's going to spontaneously repair itself. And then, yes, you were right, people who said anger. Anger's 3 and 4. So when we sort of come back to reality, we're angry. Where's the anger directed? We're angry, but where does the anger go? And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, first of all, we blame other people. Who's done this to my car? Why isn't there CCTV around here? Why is this place such a, etc.? And then eventually, there might be only a fleeting thing where we'll blame ourselves and say, if only I parked my car in a different place. If only I'd come by bicycle today. I said I was going to be green. If only. And it's my fault. And then we get to 5, which is that rejection, that feeling of being completely rejected, that feeling of being disappointed, or even depressed, downcast, disillusioned. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross put it nicely. She said, "You're immobilized." It's effectively you're stuck. And then the way out of this. Perhaps I'll pause again because this is really important. 6 is the answer to the beginning of recovery.
So we had an element before that, Marcus, a couple of points that came in before people try and answer point 6. I think that's the question now. Can people put their comments what they believe point 6 to be? But very much what came across was why me, indecision, deflateness, sadness. So be interested there, as Marcus just said, what you believe point 6 is. So give you a bit of time to have a think, and if you can put your points through, that'd be great.
You know, that why me thing is a real thing. It's the real big question of all the people. Why me? It just seems unfair.
Thank you, Steve. Steve's first up with acceptance.
Right, we'll accept his acceptance with open arms, because
we've got Karen saying rebuild. Just to give some opportunity for other shout outs for others that have taken the time out to put their views across. Gain control. Hope, always an interesting word. Hope. I think it's on the gates of heaven, apparently. Reflection and yeah, reflections come up quite a bit, Marcus.
Good stuff. Reflection and then 7, of course, is rebuilt. 7, the plan is rebuilt. 7 is my intentions, my path to the future. I've now got a new one, a new direction. I've made some decisions about what I'm going to do. And Kubler-Ross said, moving on, or seeking solutions. So ways of proving the future to become a success. There's one word that somebody said there. I didn't catch the person's name, but they'll know who they were, who said the key to this. This diagram is sometimes called the grief curve, the change curve, the curve of recovery. However, the reason I put it up here, and I know lots of people have seen it before, but the reason I want to look at it is because I think it's about the word the gentleman said a moment ago, about control, taking control. See, I think it's a control curve. Here, we don't have any control. What? It's happened? No, you're kidding. It's a visceral reaction. You can't control it because it just hits you straight. It's shock. It's terrible. And here, we're in control again. We've taken control. We've got a plan. We've got a strategy. We're in the driving seat, and we're good. It's just that here is the absolute, at the very pit of this. Now, what can you possibly say to somebody? So when I work with patients who have terminal cancer and they've just been told it, or families, etc. I've worked in hospices a lot. But when someone's had that kind of news and they've gone through all of this and they're in that place, what on earth can you say to them? And in the end, pull yourself together and make some good decisions isn't going to work, of course. But the kind of questions that counsellors ask and people want to be asked in these places are, well, what choices do you have? What options do you have? If you know you've got 6 weeks to go, what things could you do? Who could you speak to? What would you do first? And these questions are all subconsciously advertising control to the recipient. Because I could do this, I could do this, I could do a choice there, I could do it this way, I could do it that way. And unconsciously, they're realizing they've still got some control of things, which leads to acceptance and then some choices. And I think it's really important to see it as a control curve.
No, so I just want to say there, Marcus, a shout out for a few people: Ingrid, Jared, Richard, Mike, Karen, David. Thank you. I think with all those comments coming in, I think there were a couple of names there that actually got it, Marcus. So I just thought I'd do a quick shout out to those individuals.
Nice one. Thank you very much. Well, because I mean, it's exactly what it is. And it just seems to me that how long is this period going to last, the 5? So you see, I've only drawn it like this because on the flip chart, that's the size of the flip chart. I mean, it could be as long as the wall is in this office here. There's something about how long does 5 last? And that's why I read the book. How long does it take me to get over my father's passing so I can function again? And the book says, duh, it all depends, Marcus. It depends on three different things, three separate things. I wish I'd given more time for this, for you to ask questions or say things, but we can go into that afterwards. The three things which drive this, how long this is going to last. She says, one, let's just say something about you. It's your personality, your learned behaviours, how you've got through such things in the past, your experience, your positive nature. Some people are more robust and resilient than others. Some people get over things quicker than others. Some people just have techniques and strategies to drop things and forget things and then get on. Some people keep things in perspective better than others. And they manage to see, well, in the big scheme of things, it's furloughing for a period of time, or it's losing my job. But when I think of it in comparative to what other people have had to go through, I should count myself lucky, really. And but it depends on you and where you're at the moment, the state you're in, back to the previous conversation. Secondly, it depends on others, significant others, the other people in your life who really matter. And what are they saying to you? Because they could say, oh, crikey, someone's crashed into your car. That's terrible. That was your pride and joy. And I know your job's not going very well either at the moment. And these things normally come in threes. I wonder what's going to be next for you. And they'll invite you to stay in five in a bleak place. And others will say, well, come on, we've got some choices to make. We're in this together. Let's crack on. And we've been a good company. We've done really well in the last few years, and we can do it again. Let's rebuild ourselves. I'm up for it if you are. And we talk ourselves as a group into recovery faster than we otherwise would. Make sure that you've got good friends, good people around you who keep on encouraging you even in the dark times. And the last thing, which is less important, relatively speaking, is in terms of an insight, is how big a shock was it, and how bad was it, and how much did you love that person if it's a relationship like that. But those are the three big drivers. One important thing to say, and I'm trying to be as level-headed about this as I can be, but I do think there is something about how do we find, how do we manage ourselves so that we don't go to this thing for the stuff that we shouldn't go to this thing for. In other words, how do we make sure that we leave this for on death and dying? It's ever so important, because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book is about that. It's not about furloughing. And I don't want to be insensitive, but I do think there is something about if we can keep perspective of things, then we've got more chance of accepting things faster, quicker, stronger. And I'd like to invite you to take the Mafia's advice, really. The Mafia said, don't get mad, get even. The Buddha said, he or she who angers you conquers you. As soon as you get angry, you're lost. As soon as you get really cross with something, then you're likely to say things which you regret afterwards. And when you blame yourself, you're likely to put yourself in this place before you recover. And I just think there's something in this. It's about control just here between 2 and 3. When things go south, we don't have to go with them. There's a sense in which as soon as you find yourself getting cross, as soon as you find yourself getting a change of state that way, then there's something about how might I channel this into acceptance quickly and then get across this thing. This is for on death and dying. I see people go through this over a cup of tea. And we see people go through this over the smallest stuff. And I think we should just leave this for the really big occasions. And we've got the rest of our lives to practice managing ourselves just as we feel the rise of anger coming, channeling it into this place instead. I'm just going to change flip charts a second to give a notion of that, but maybe we can just recap for a second. There's a sense in which that's the moment to take control, when we've denied something and it's coming to the reality that this really exists, and we start to feel cross. That's the bit to, as a mum might have said, catch your breath, count to 10, and then channel this. Not easy, but I think it's the way. How do we manage ourselves so that we do this well? Well, remember, we've got the speed of our recovery depends on these 3 things. How big is it? Are we able to keep it in perspective? Secondly, our own resilience, the person we are. And lastly, other people that matter to us. Okay. I can send photos of these slides so that you can refer to them afterwards and perhaps share them with children and other people who matter in your lives, because this is the stuff that really does. Charles Dickens, his biographer said, how could anybody work so hard and produce so much? The energy of Dickens. He wrote so many books. How could anybody? I've got his library over here, and it's colossal. And his biographer said Dickens lived the life of 10 men in one lifetime. But Dickens is saying, yes, but this is a world not for moping and droning in. We don't go to 5 unless it's for the really bad stuff. But it's about action. I'd rather like that line from Robert Louis Stevenson. The importance of us, the duty we're most underrated is the duty of being happy, being in a good state. Because when you're in a good state, you find yourself making better decisions and getting through things. Ever heard somebody say, well, she lost it because she was in a bad place? And there we have it. If someone's in a bad place, then they're likely to get angry at the next easy thing to get angry at. Or here, perhaps the best one of all of these quotes, Christopher Reeve saying that when he fell off his horse. Imagine that. Christopher Reeve, actor, Superman, the world at his feet. Then he falls off his horse and has to have a tube put down his neck so that he can breathe for the rest of his short life to come. And then one day he said he'd wake up in the morning and his routine had been to burst into tears as soon as he became conscious. As soon as I'm conscious, I remember what happened to me and collapse. And then he asked his doctor, by blinking, could you set my alarm clock so when it goes off, there's a 10-minute snooze period? And I'll have 10 minutes of uncontrollable tears, but after that, when that second one goes, enough, take control. Keep a daily limit on self-pity. Okay, I want to think about how we manage this resilience thing. Oops, excuse me. I'm thinking about resilience being made up of 5 fibers. Now, the dictionary definition of the word resilience is it's the property of a material where if you hit it so hard with a hammer, the hammer just bounces off. It's absolutely impervious to an external force. But the other definition, which perhaps is a more subtle one, is resilience is the ability to return to former of a property to return to former shape once it's received a blow, like a squash ball or another material where when it's hit hard comes back to former shape again. And I think there's 5 fibers involved in this. The first one is, so in other words, in what ways can you be resilient? Well, you can be physically resilient. You can get yourself fit and strong, and like people say, isn't it, when you're physically feeling really good and in really good health, then it has a good impact on your mental health too, because you feel in control. And we can be mentally resilient. You can have a plan, an idea, a strategy. Football teams, rugby teams will have a plan, a strategy to follow so that they can think clearly under pressure and make good decisions in the right moments. You can be as well versed and well read as you can be on your subject. You can be trained up so that you know all the steps and stages and you're an expert in your field. So you can be mentally resilient. We can also be emotionally resilient. That is, in a really happy place, as people say. She's in a really good place. She makes really good decisions. She's there for you, etc. So we can be able to control our emotions much more readily because we feel good. Next, social resilience. You can be in a team where you feel like you're really fit, where you're united, and together we feel so much stronger than when we're just individuals. And lastly, there's a kind of resilience which is based on purpose, really. It's a sort of spiritual resilience, the one that people have, I guess, some of the care workers and key workers. I'm going to work today and I know it's really dangerous. And there's a lot at stake here, but this is my purpose. This is what I do this job for. I've always been a nurse, I've always been a doctor, and I know what I was taking on when I took the job. And this is about something bigger than me. And you see people just stepping out there and the bullets seem to bounce off them somehow, emotionally. They're supercharged. And so there's a sense in which those are the 5 key drivers of someone's personal resilience. And I'm saying that when you're in really good shape in these 5 ways, you're likely to find that curve a much easier thing to get through than other times. So I just wondered what we might do in terms of building a kind of plan or a strategy. So I'll be really quick, but it's meant as food for thought. These are a bit random, but just think about you personally. If you're going to be emotionally resilient, then there is something about how much time do you get where you're in flow. And what I mean by that is doing stuff that you really love doing where you sort of lose yourself. And when you're just in a really good place, and you're doing the sport or the activity that you really enjoy, and you're doing enough of it, and you just feel completely at peace and in wonder. And how much time do you get? Have you had that in the lockdown, for example, where you feel really in the right place? And mentally, how well worked up are you to think clearly under pressure, as Clive Woodward's England rugby team would say? And physically, have you got yourself, has this been a good time for you, where you've been able to get yourself in a good physical condition, set goals for that, and eat well and train well and work out well or whatever, so that you feel really on point at the moment? Deepak Chopra put it rather nicely in a tweet, and that's one of my favourite expressions really for how do we get healthier? Well, probably collectively, generally, there's something about if we eat less, moved more, and found time to relax, that might keep us in a really good place. Secondly, socially, are we keeping up the love, our relationships, friendships? Are we working on those so that we've got a proper sense of being supported by others and being a good support to them, confidence in relationships, confided in by others, and total trust? And how far are you, like those children I worked with in that school, on a mission? Do you have your goal in mind, a destination that you're really up for, that you keep thinking about, and it absorbs you and drives you and gives you a real reason for feeling positive? I think those are personal things. And I think as leaders in a business, it's something about, let's just work out how we might do that. When we get back to work full on, if you haven't got back there yet, then is there a sense in which we've got exciting goals? When you set new, exciting, refreshing goals for your company in a collective way, set finish lines so that people know you can get to the end of something and celebrate it and enjoy it, and then do we have a sense of cause even? Remember what our business is about, our purpose. Could you reignite that purpose? Because when people can see 7 and keep believing in 7 and wanting 7, funny how they get through the curve faster, because I don't care what happens, we're still going to get there. Attitude comes across. How far would you build team unity? So what are you going to do to get your team back together as one unit again, and a real sense of interdependence, where people talk about leaders talk about people who have done really good things during the lockdown. People have come up with new plans. People are doing new stuff that we can build on, so that we get a sense that together we're stronger. We get together, we do town halls and team meetings, and enjoy each other's company, and keep communicating the successes about other people in other departments, so that the whole business starts to rely and depend and enjoy the success of others. Do you have a kind of health and fitness culture going on in your business, even charities that you might support, which keep people doing the right thing for themselves physically and enjoying that physical uplift? In terms of people being mentally resilient, is there training in place? Are there strategies and plans? Have you proved the concept so people are really confident in the ideas we've got as a business in terms of the new things we're going to do? And is there a kind of well-being support mechanism in your business too? And lastly, back to self-talk again, is it a culture where you as leaders can keep encouraging and enabling others to feel like their work's worthwhile, recognizing their efforts, praising them as they go, and keeping their self-talk really high, and coaching them as they go too? I think those things will give us the best chance to be resourceful and resilient as a company stepping out of COVID-19 and preparing ourselves without consciously knowing it for the next challenge that comes. Okay, last couple of thoughts, if I may. I've been thinking about the power of monthly targets, really, because I think a unit of 12 over a year, I think that's, if you're going to set goals, as I keep banging on about, I think there's something about having a plan which is a monthly plan, so that you can keep yourself really accountable. And a friend of mine who was in the special boat service said that in the SBS, that's what they continually did. That all through your training, you're told the aim is to be in better shape at the end of this month than you were at the beginning, spiritually, mentally, physically. And so I wonder what goals you might not set for just the long way out. Matthew Holland saying he's going to be captain of Ireland, but also for this next month, what am I going to do in physical, emotional, social, or a purpose-based way, or mentally, which is going to be strong for me. Set goals in those 5 areas. And the last thing which I've got to say, because I was talking about control and really want to keep that front of mind, is this. Stephen Covey produced this diagram when he was alive, which I rather liked, called well, concern versus influence. And what he was really saying was control the controllables. How do we control the controllables? And his thesis is, there are things which concern us that we're not going to do anything about, but they bother us. So what's Boris going to do next about opening up hotels? And look what the World Health Organization has done now. And look at the state of the roads. And the weather is now going this way. And this is what our boss has done. And they furloughed these people. And this is a really crap idea, etc. They talk about things which concern them, but they're not going to change. And there's other things we talk about which we can influence, and we are going to have a go at changing and make change. And so there's two places. And the question is, what do we spend our thought space doing, and what do we talk about? So if we spend our time talking about stuff that concerns us, that we're not going to change, the very nature of that language has to be I can't sort of language. It's negative because it's criticizing other people, even though we're not going to do anything about it. It's blaming other people for crap decisions that they've made, or it's getting angry because this idea is being put forward, or it's still self-limiting because all the time we're talking about stuff we can't control, we're complaining about stuff which we're unable to control, therefore it shows we're powerless and limited. It's complaint language, it's plaintive, it's combative, it's aggressive sometimes, and the voice tone that goes with it is normally one which is going south, a depressing, negative, southbound language. And the problem with that is, you see, and the thesis goes, the more you talk about stuff that you can't control, that you're bitter about, and the less you talk about stuff you control, the more you advertise to yourself how uninfluential you are, and the more other people don't want to give you responsibility either, because you become known now as a moaning Minnie, a dementor, a mood hoover, you know, a negative vampire of the spirit or whatever. But you become less influential. Whereas, just focus and talk about the stuff that you can influence. If you can change it, keep talking about it. If not, be quiet about that then, because it's not going to do any good. It's just going to limit. And I guess if we look at Colonel Tom Moore, for example, there's the person who decides, well, all I'm going to do is what I can do. Use what I have, start where I am, do what I can. And and it becomes an I can soundtrack. Because the only stuff we're talking about is stuff that we can be confident, we can make change to. It encourages others, it's energizing, it's uplifting, it's empowering. And as a consequence, when you talk like that, you're upbeat, you sound good, and other people hear somebody who's trying to make change. There's loads of energy that comes with the language, your voice tones up, and you end up changing much more than you would have done. The point is, I get the theory. I rather like the idea of that change curve, that control curve, because I think you can see yourself on it, plot yourself on it, and when you see yourself there, it can help you just get a bit of distance from where you are and make some choices and get to acceptance faster. With this too, I can also see how that might work. But I also know loads of people who know that theory but still carry on doing all the negative stuff. So how do we really convert it? And last thought then is, how might we just notice what we say at the start of a sentence? I've been listening to people on the media speaking about this whole COVID thing over weeks and weeks, and you hear so many sentences where you know where it's going to go from the first utterance, and that's the point to catch ourselves. You hear someone say the trouble is, you know where it's going. It's a real pain. What I hate most about this, it's disgusting, it's appalling. The real problem is, the headache for me is, they're incantations to ill health as much as anything else. You know, auto-suggestions to bad stuff. You know, it makes me sick. It's got pain in it and headache and etc. I just think, hear the first utterance and just at that point, catch ourselves. What am I saying? Just listening to the first moment of the sentence, I think is a real place to control ourselves. Because see, when you hear a sentence which starts like that, what I find exciting about this, or wouldn't it be brilliant if, or here's an idea, or what I'm going to do next, or what I'm going to do first, or probably the best option, that's that stuff. Hear ourselves starting a sentence, catch ourselves there, and if it sounds anything like these, crack on. If not, then probably time to pause. So, I'm just getting around to that thought to conclude that the Buddha said that rather nicely. The person who knows but doesn't use doesn't yet know. And I think this is all about the application of stuff. A number of people I've met who I've heard and spoken to over the years who have been properly positive, been upbeat, and then when this COVID thing comes, end up saying really negative things and getting to a really bad place because their business isn't performing. And it just strikes me that there are fair weather positivists. It's easy to be positive when the sun's shining. The real place to be, the most useful place to be, is when we're in a challenging place. So next time something challenging comes along, I'd invite you to remember that sweeter after difficulty bit, and then get sweeter on the spot there and get cracking on, and live that life of managing state, being positive, making sure that we're ambitious, having confidence in ourselves and others, and cherishing energy. Thank you ever so much. I'm really privileged to be able to speak to you like this, locked down here in the Cotswolds. I'd love some questions if you have any, and trust that's been of some use. And as I said earlier, I'll get these slides, these actual photographs might be fun, sent to you via Peter, so that you can go through this again and share it with others. But if anyone has any questions, I think Peter's prepared to be the monitor of those and moderate a Q&A for the next 10 minutes. Thank you ever so much.
Wow, Marcus, what a great talk you've gone through, from Alex Ferguson right through to a number of historical quotes through that, including Superman himself, Christopher Reeve. So I think from that point of view, the comments coming through is amazing. So we have had a few questions, and we'll encourage viewers to send some questions in. We have had a question in about the 5 fibers of resilience, and quite an interesting question. Is there one that outweighs the other? So is there more of a weighting factor to one of the 5 than the other? Are they all important?
Cool, what a brilliant question. That's the best question. That's a really great question. And it's something which I meant to say and didn't say. But let's go back to these. This will sound a bit weird to some people, but I did a piece of work. I did a piece of work with Orange mobile phones years ago, and I was working with the people who take the question. When a customer wants to port their mobile, they phone up and say, "I'm so dissatisfied with your service. I want to port my mobile. Give me the number I need to speak to and the ability to port." And the frontline Orange would say, "Oh, you need to speak to this person here," and hand you on to somebody who tried to persuade you to stay. And this man was very good at, I was sat with him, and he was brilliant at persuading people to change their minds. But he took a lot of abuse in the process. "I don't need to talk," etc. And I said to him, "What do you do at weekends?" He said, "Actually, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, and I take the watchtower to people's houses and try to persuade them to read the watchtower and to see where their life really comes from and is going to." I thought, crikey, he spends Monday to Friday getting abuse from customers day after day, and then at the weekends goes out to get some more. I said, "Why did you go through that?" He said, "It's because it's what we're born for. And may I interest you in a copy of the watchtower?" And I thought, whoa. But on a serious note, there's somebody who really believes that his cause is this. And it's a proper cause. It's a calling. It's a real spiritual purpose. And I think when you have that, it causes you to build the others really strongly. You don't need to be super fit to have energy. I mean, Winston Churchill, I don't know if you saw that film Darkest Hour, because I saw it and then I researched about Churchill afterwards, because Churchill was a big man, of course, not very healthy, but in every scene that Gary Oldman, the method actor, plays, Churchill is walking down corridors at hyperspeed, always striding and strutting, and there's a load of personal energy going on. And why is that? Because the purpose is massive, that we've got to win this war. This is going to save lives. This is going to save the country. And when your purpose is really strong, all these other things click into place. Just like when an athlete decides, "I want to win this, I was born to win this," then they end up devoting themselves to getting physically stronger, which causes mental toughness because there's a discipline that goes on in there, etc. But a long answer to the question, but it's a deep one. If you have a real purpose, ever so strong, then I think that causes growth in all of the others. They're all interdependent, but that's the big driver. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Marcus. I'm aware of time. We probably can squeeze 1 or 2 more questions in. I guess this question came in from one of our lady listeners around the acceptance thing, is there ever a case where acceptance will never happen?
Yes, I mean, some people do get stuck in not accepting something until they say closure. And if you think of, one of the tragedies for Hillsborough families is they didn't get closure, and they couldn't accept what was presented as the truth because they didn't see it as the truth. It wasn't the truth, and because it's not the truth, they can't accept it, so they get stuck there. And that's the real tragedy for the victims of Hillsborough. Not just the people who passed on, but the people left behind. Now they were asked to accept something which they couldn't accept, and so they're stuck in that place fire until they get proper closure. They won't get out of it. And but good news. This isn't for. This is only for on death and dying, and for most things, I think we should be able to get a place of acceptance. Yeah,
And I'm joking aside there, Marcus, I've accepted my webcam is not going to work today, so I've had to accept that on a less serious note. Just one more question that's came in relating to a lot of what you've discussed, and it was really around some of the opening piece about resetting your mindset. Now, the gentleman that's put the question is essentially around the point around, is there a time scale for resetting your mindset? Is it as black and white of that, Marcus, or is this something that's built up over time? So I guess the question directly, is there a time scale about resetting your mindset? Is it a silver bullet as much as that?
No, that's a good question. No, there's no time period. There's no time period because some people reset their mind caused by an immediate tragedy or an immediate event that's so significant that they go right and they make a decision for the rest of their life. Change happens in a heartbeat. Now, you're a smoker then, you're not a smoker now. You stopped at that moment and it all changed. It's just the period of build up and preparation. That's the long period, or the bit that really draws things out. So change can happen really fast, and it's curious because suggestion we make to self is very powerful. And if one were to decide, by the end of this lockdown or by the end of next month, I'll have a new goal. I don't even know what it is yet, but I'll have a new goal. Then, curiously enough, if you set that as a target, unconsciously, but keep repeating it and writing stuff down to remind yourself of it, that can do it. But so it can be as long. Some people take that time, a long time, to make a decision about reframing their life and resetting themselves. It depends on the amount of. In the end, it depends on intensity. How intense is the desire? How intense is the feeling? I think that's probably a good way of saying it. There's something here about perspective, if I may. I mean, this isn't very comfortable to talk about, but my brother-in-law has had a really difficult COVID-19 period, to say the least. His mother died a year or so ago, so he was in grief about that. But his father's passed on during this period of COVID-19, and his business has gone to the wall, more or less. And his brother, who's younger than him, just 51, has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and sent home to not eat anymore. And I just wonder how on earth he can keep it together, quite honestly. And there's a sense in which he said to me, well, I've got my family, and they're the most important thing. That's what I've got left as well, by the way. So I've got to be good for them. So I can't break down and collapse, etc., because they need me more than ever. And I just think there's something about sometimes leaders, parents, and people of responsibility have to kind of suspend their grief or postpone it. And I know that when Kevin comes out of this, he's going to have some, I'm sure he's going to make some really positive decisions again and get stuck in. He could go under, completely emotionally. But my sense is that that kind of wake-up call will cause something really proper in him. And but it's intensity in the end. How much do you really want it? How much is that a destination you're really keen to have, as opposed to a casual thing? And surely this COVID-19 thing has asked us to be much less casual about our intentions and much more thoughtful about them. But good luck to the person who asked that question, by the way, in terms of the reset. Don't put yourself under pressure to make it happen, but at the same time, you've got to believe it will and keep the habit going, which keeps asking for whatever that thing is that's going to fulfill you most.
And I guess last question here, I think it echoes and ties in very nicely with your points there, Marcus, is around inner strength and how people can maintain that inner strength where they can learn from others, but also how do they develop that inner strength themselves? Because sometimes strength can be both a negative and a positive dependent on the influence of other factors. So I guess the example there from your brother-in-law is the factors of his inner strength and what he's demonstrating. But I guess, are there any tips or takeaways as a last point, because I'm aware of time, that people could think about maintaining that inner strength?
Yes, yes. We've got to be fast here. So that's a route, okay? There's a proper route here about making sure you've got a good social network that supports you. Make sure that those things are covered. But I'll be really fast with this. There's a model of the brain in terms of how brain waves work. And just to be really clear that when you're wide awake, there's different sets of brain waves happening in your head than when you're in daydream, light sleep, and deep sleep. But the place between sleep and awake, just that one there, is a really important one, because the thought you take to bed with you, if you watch Hannibal Lecter and you see some horror movie, then you'll go to sleep on that notion, and that notion will manifest in you probably waking up in a cold sweat, having a nightmare. But that's because your unconscious has got involved. Your intuition comes from the Latin word intuare, literally means teach oneself. So the thought you take to bed with you is the one that travels the night with you. And you could go to bed with a real anxiety and a terrible fear, and then you'll teach yourself fear and anxiety at sleep. You can go to bed with a question which you'd love to solve, or an ambition and a positive outlook for that matter, and that's the one that travels the night with you. So if you were even to, like I do, finish the night by writing the 3 most uplifting things that happened today, the 3 best things that happened today in a diary, and then go to sleep on those, then I'm saying that your brain will look after those thoughts as you travel the night. Do that every day for a year, 1,000 happy thoughts. You're starting to infuse your mind with good things and a focus on the good rather than the bad, including looking at you well rather than looking at you badly, nurturing confidence rather than a lack of it.
And hopefully one of those 3 things is today's webinar, Marcus, for our viewers today before they go to bed tonight. So fingers crossed, we've had some great comments. So I just want to say a massive thank you on behalf of IWFN and myself in terms of participating today. For viewers, just to remind them that this has been recorded, so it will be available. And also any questions that couldn't be unfortunately answered today, I will forward on to Marcus that can answer in his own time. But Marcus, thank you very much. That was a great episode, so thank you again. So just to wrap up, and thank you, Marcus, as I say. Just to remind viewers, we do have our impact and experience survey. Essentially, this is a membership survey, so we would encourage you to complete the survey. It helps us shape the content, product, services, gives us feedback on what's working, what needs improvement from the membership and customer experience journey. So please fill that survey in. Just a reminder as well, there will be a survey post-webinar, so we like your feedback on this webinar and help in future episodes in the series as well. So please participate in those surveys. They're not very long, but they are highly valued and do actually impact on what we offer our members and customers going forward. Just a reminder, the Insight Hub obviously has had a research. I'm heavily involved in this, funny enough, and Insight is research reports, good practice guide, guidance notes, content hubs, and more. And that more is today's episode as well as the previous 8 episodes on our series. So please go on there for information. And the majority of that, you'd be pleased to know, is free, accessible to members and non-members. So please go on to the Insight Hub. Talking about Insight, which is linked to the episodes, our COVID-19 page. It also has a return to work section now that's regularly updated from the policy and content team at the Institute. So please have a look up there. There are regular updates on that in the world we're currently living in, and obviously with the policy and government arrangements rapidly changing over the last few weeks, and will continue the next few weeks, I'm sure. So please look out for updates on that section of our website. Again, we love to have your questions and case studies. This links to the survey post webinar as well, but there's an email address there to share your thoughts, questions, case studies. So please use policy@iwfm.org.uk. And just lastly, thank you to the viewers, listeners, to joining today's webinar. Hopefully you got a lot from the how from Marcus. Marcus went through a heck of a lot within the 45 minutes, and I think the session could have gone on a lot. So, as I say, it will be recorded. Please look out for next week's episode of Series Moved Weekly. Without a spoiler alert, we have exceptional speaker next week about the theme around technology, so that will be announced very shortly. So please sign up to these free webinars. Hopefully they're giving a lot back to you as listeners, viewers, as you're taking an hour out of your time to be on this today. But as I say, it's been recorded. If you'd like to pass on to clients or colleagues, please do. And thank you again for joining today's webinar, and take care and keep safe.